Greetings, I'm Kathryn Hogan, and this is Genealogy with a Canadian Twist weekly webinar recap. A short video to give you a recap of our latest weekly webinars. Now, our weekly webinars are held just about every Thursday, and we talk about a variety of things having to do with Canadian genealogy or genealogy with a Canadian perspective. And this is brought to you by my company, Looking for Ancestors, where we help you find your ancestors in Canada. And as I said, just about every Thursday, we do a free weekly webinar, tutorial webinar, to help you find your ancestors in Canada. This week, we had a special guest, Christine Woodcock of Genealogy Tours of Scotland, and Christine presented some information to help us find Scottish ancestors who left Scotland and came to Canada for land and opportunity. Now, if you would like to join us for our weekly webinars, again, free tutorial webinars about Canadian genealogy, then you can find all the links below on how to sign up and get that information delivered right to your email inbox. Now, let's move on to our video recap of this week's webinar, and we'll take a little listen here, a little view, and watch a little bit of the presentation by Christine Woodcock. So here we go. And when and how did you become interested in family history?
So my mom is one of 20 siblings, and so when after I got into school, it was too expensive to go back and forth, right? So, because by the time I was done school, it was high season and we couldn't always afford to go. So, but we had company all summer, every summer. And we would always gather, and my mom and my grandmother were the storytellers, and we would sit and listen to the same stories over and over and over. And my mom and my grandmother died within about 8 months of each other.
Oh, wow.
And I had young kids. Christopher was just a babe. And, I got this real kick in my gut that my kids needed to know their history. They needed to know those stories. They needed to know they were part of something bigger. I'm going to cry. And, oh my God, Kathryn. Oh, that never happens.
Okay, we're just going to take a minute here. We're going to breathe.
That never happens. Oh my God.
See, we get emotional sometimes here on the weekly webinars.
Just thinking about anyway, so then I what I did was, with my aunt, we put together a record of my grandfather's descendants.
Okay.
And you know what? Once you start, that's it, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely, right?
Yeah.
Diane says here, oh my, Christine, that's me in tears. There we go. Sympathy tears for you.
So just a really quick story. Diane was on my tour when we were in Glasgow.
Okay.
And we were in the Lanarkshire archives, and I discovered that my grandmother had a stillbirth that none of us had known about by going through the cemetery records. And I was like, suddenly all these stories made sense. And I turned around and I looked up, and Diane's standing there with tears.
You know what? I think that's something a lot of us have in common when it comes to family history, is that we empathize and sympathize with our fellow family historians and genealogists because we get it. We understand.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. At the risk of having like Niagara Falls tears here, who is your favorite ancestor, Chris?
It's probably my granny.
Okay.
You know what? Because my papa died when I was fairly young. I think I was 10. He was certainly the glue in that we all connected to him. He had 2 wives, but my granny raised all those kids on her own. And my granny was everybody's granny, even to Sarah's children. And yeah, I really admire her. All right. So one of the, my key interests, I think, in Scottish research is not just people who have Scottish ancestors, but why they left Scotland. Being an immigrant myself, I think that, there's a whole bunch of reasons why people leave, and it depends on the time. And, we hear so much about the history of, the lowland clearances and the highland clearances and the Jacobites and all that kind of stuff. But really, for a lot of people, Canada was a place where they could get land and where there was opportunity. So, one of the greatest exports probably for Scotland at any given time, up until probably the early 1920s, mid 1900s, was the export of their people. Their people have gone far and wide, and the diaspora reaches right around the world. And it's really quite fascinating to see what led them to leave and where they ended up. So, just a few statistics. 15,000 Highland Scots came to Canada between 1770 and 1815. Many of those settled in PEI, Nova Scotia, and Upper Canada. Now, remember, that's all that was really here at that time. That's why they settled there, right? The West hadn't opened yet. The majority of the people who came were Catholic. They were from the Highlands and the Islands. And if you look on a map of Scotland, the islands are really quite separate. You can tell that. You need a boat to get there. And they are off the west coast of Scotland. They start sort of just in around Glasgow area. And those are the Inner Hebrides. And then you get a bit further north and you're kind of off the coast of the north of Scotland to the west. And those are the Outer Hebrides. So Lewis, Harris, Benbecula. And the lower islands would be like Tiree, Call, Mull, Skye. And but geographically, even though they're separated by water, they're considered to be part of the Highlands. So when we talk about the Highlands and the Islands, really we're talking about the same region. And part of the reason for that is a lot of the landowners, particularly the landowners on the west coast of Scotland, owned those islands. And so, they really were a part of the mainland in terms of ownership and the way that they were managed. And the Highlands, even though Scotland had switched over to Presbyterianism, a lot of the Highlands and the Islands held out, and they remained Catholic. And particularly, the islands were kind of sort of the last to come on board with that.
And who is your favorite Canadian singer or band?
Well, interestingly enough, so a few. My favorite, interestingly enough, would probably still be Anne Murray.
Yep.
And so not only her songs, but just her whole story. And I went to high school in Hamilton, Ontario, and a bunch of kids that I went to school with became Teenage Head.
Really?
Yes. Stevie Mann lived 2 doors down from me. So, yeah.
Well,
so, I mean, I don't know that I would really be into their headbanging music, but I certainly.
You got to support the local talent, right?
Yeah. And who's the one that goes around and does all the beach party ones? Kim Mitchell.
Kim Mitchell, definitely. Yeah.
He's a hoot.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Chris, for being with us today. There you have it. A short recap of this week's webinar, Canada, Land and Opportunity. And we want to thank Christine for being our presenter. And also, if you would like to join us for our free weekly webinars, just about every Thursday, then you can find all of the information below. And also, if you happen to find this video recap about Canadian genealogy, about the Scottish ancestors, if you found it interesting and helpful, then please give us a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel to get all the notifications. All right, that's it for this week. And until next time, have fun looking for ancestors.